Come one, come all, it's time to get started. Welcome to another edition of the Feedback Loop. It's a big one. Wow, this might be the record thus far. Got Luigi in here, got Katie in here, got Tedgel in here, got Rebecca in here. Might have some other guest spots coming along. Just a ton of work. You're like beginning to hit that groove. It's like 2020 is actually happening. Yeah, seriously, everybody's plugging back in. It's good to see you all back. I'm super excited to finally have this back underway. Also, we have CouchBot. CouchBot's going to fire in like 3 seconds. So super excited. If you're watching this later, just know that when we hit our live streams, CouchBot will always fire in the Discord channel. So if you are ever wondering how people begin plugging into this system and beginning asking questions, if you want to ask questions during the live show, it's all over here in the Discord channel. So newpragmatic.com, you can sign up for the Discord channel right there. And you know what? Let's get this underway because we have a wave of things to cover today. So as you can see, Tedgel, Rebecca, Luigi, Katie, I gave James some feedback, so I won't pick on James too much. James, you have some philosophical questions that I'd like to get after. I do want to start though over here. I'm going to come back to all this. Oddly enough, James turned in 4 assignments over the weekend. So James was having a moment. He was like zoning out, like but let's go over here. I want to look at this CrossFit site because Rebecca has a question related to the speed of the site, and I was wanting to actually open it up over in Chrome, and the reason I wanted to open it up in Chrome is so we could run some speed tests on it. All right. There are a couple things that we can do that will tell us exactly how this is working. Remember earlier when we were looking at Rebecca's project, there was some it was really lagging, and I can tell it's lagging again right now. And it turned out there were some server log errors that were happening, which I'm not familiar with the hosting provider for this particular site. I am seeing that it kicked me over immediately to home 2. And that's interesting, because this is, and it's also got a weird drop down there. I'm not sure why that's occurring, Rebecca. It looks like maybe some spacing got built in here to your nav bar, but the thing that I wanted to come over here for, and I want to kind of focus. It says home 2. I'm not sure why there's a home 2 now. But it's kicking us over to the Hebrew site. If I go over to the English site and we load the switcher, like the English site comes up like boom right away, right? Okay, so why is that? And to get us there, I want to open up an incognito window, and this is really where testing. You got to just test your stuff. An incognito window is going to load everything as if it had not loaded before. All right. So that loaded pretty quick. All right. Now I want to go back, and I want to go back to the Hebrew site. Okay. And I want to load that in an incognito window because I think it's the Hebrew version of the site that's slowing everything down. And let's just see what happens, because this is taking longer already. Now, that did load okay. That loaded okay. Although we still got that little spot up there, and we're going to talk about that. But the big thing I want to do here is I want to run an audit on this. To run an audit, this is easiest to do in Chrome. But you come over here, and of course, I've got my inspector tools open. You come over here, and you go down to audits. And this is going to run Lighthouse. And Lighthouse is basically going to tell you, it's going to give you a score of how this is actually functioning. And this is the score that I would go with because it's coming from Google. It's telling you, okay, here's what's up with your site. Now you can simulate. Right now, I'm not going to throw any throttling on it, but if I wanted to see like, okay, what's this like over a slower bandwidth? Slower, and what I mean by that is, like it would be a 4 times slower computer than what I've got. And I've got a nice MacBook Pro. It's like a 2019 MacBook Pro. It's not the newest thing out there, but it is newer than probably a lot of your customers are going to have. Now, granted, a lot of your customers may be coming in with the fastest smartphone in the world. I don't know. But we run these audits to get a sense of how it's actually functioning. So I'm going to go ahead and run the audit. And as this is running, you're going to see a lot of things happen. You're going to see like the internet go away. You're going to see it load without the CSS altogether at all. So this takes a minute. This is not really how it loads. It is going through a forced progression that loads everything in a very specific order. It's looking at page weight. It's looking at size of images. It's looking at first pixel on screen. You'll see the no internet. So it's like acting like the internet went away and then bringing it back. And we're pretty close. Now we've got just the CSS. And we're not the CSS. We've got without CSS. And the performance on the Hebrew site is a 2. Okay? Hebrew site performing very badly. Accessibility, SEO, fine. Best practices, but what's up here? Okay, so we've got 16 seconds to the first contentful paint, which is like the first thing on the screen. And you'll see like it's got all these empty screens, and then it finally paints something. Okay? Reduce server response times. So, what the hell does that mean? So, this is telling us that the server is struggling. This goes back to your hosting provider. Okay? Your hosting provider is choking the hell out of the site. And it appears to be specifically for the Hebrew site, and I'll get at that in a moment. Accessibility is fine, like off the chart. You're doing great there. There's some insecure. There's some cross domain. There's some JavaScript front end libraries that I'm sure one of the WordPress plugins is utilizing. So the real issue here is just on straight up performance. And this is where I would have a conversation with your hosting provider. I want to run the same test, though. I'll run the exact same test on your regular page. And what I mean by regular page is the English version of the site. Because if you remember WordPress, the way this works is you have one version of the site that is the Hebrew version, and you built that one second, okay? You built that one after you put caching in. And my suspicion is there is a potential that caching was not applied to the second site. And this is loading slow. I'm going to guess that it's going to pull up on the Hebrew site. And that's fine. But it's really struggling. Okay, so it pulled up on the Hebrew site. If I go over here and I just want that one. No, that pulled up on the Hebrew site too. Let's get over here to the English site. English site, like, ta-da! So I want to run an audit on this. All right? And just so you're aware, if you're not running a WordPress site, that's okay. You can run these audits on your sites too, okay? And if you're working on like a portfolio, whatever it is that you're doing, I would encourage you to run audits on your site. and you can get into the throttling. We haven't even gotten into the throttling. We got a 2 on the first one. Now I want to see what this is going to be like. And keep in mind, the audits are going to treat this very fairly by comparison to, like, when you go and you load in tabs. Like, this is all going to Google and saying, okay, report back. When you load in tabs, is it really going all the way down and coming all the way back up? I can tell you right now, this is already loading faster. So what's it going to be? So there's our CSS, or there's our LAC without CSS. Now we're looking at the whole thing, and 80. How the hell? I'm near cursing on this one. How do you get a 2 and you get an 80? And I tell you how you do that. It's caching. Okay? It's caching. So my suggestion, Rebecca, look at this. It's a 2. It's a 2. Over here, it's an 80. 2, 80. The whole kit and caboodle here is caching. So for you, my suggestion is the caching plugin, deactivate it, uninstall it, reinstall it. Because I believe what happened is this. You built the first pages, these pages, all right? You built the front page, you built the schedule, and those are running like a top. I mean, 80's not great, but it's not bad. When you're comparing it, when you're holding that up to a 2, it's a world of difference. Now, can we make that faster? Well, yeah, I think we can. And here's the thing. You've got still a 3 megabyte network payload that's downloading all the images and stuff. I think we can lazy load that. Okay. And lazy load just means, okay, I'm not going to load any of this stuff, all these images and stuff down here, until you actually start scrolling to it. That means that it's going to load much faster. Much faster, when you're already at an 80, much faster, gets you into the 90s and 100s. Okay? Or hundreds. Jesus. You can't go higher than 100. But my whole point is this. Lazy loading can make this a little faster. Caching is what needs to be happening here, and it's clearly not happening. So because of that, and like, we've got a little bit of navbar fun going on up here because the logo is different. Like, I just can't for the life of me figure out what's going on with the Hebrew site. But the Hebrew site was built after you installed the caching. Okay? So this is what I don't like about WordPress. WordPress is a bit of a black box when you pull in plugins. Okay? If we had control of the code, we could, like, oh, hey, data attribute and all that, and we could actually have more control over exactly what's happening and when it's happening. But because it's WordPress, it's kind of like off over there. So with that said, delete the caching, deactivate it, reinstall it. I think in doing that, and then run the audits, okay? In doing that, you should get a number that's closer to this. And then if you want to push it further, we can look at lazy loading, okay? And I'm certain that there's a bajillion ways to do lazy loading with WordPress that aren't going to, like, have you tearing your hair out. But the bottom line here is the audits show us 2 different sites, even though it's the same site. And the difference between the 2 of them is you installed caching on these pages, and I don't think they ever really applied to the foreign language site. Okay, so that's my 2 cents on that. I think that you should have some pretty straightforward next steps. Delete caching, reinstall it, run the audits, and then from there we can talk further, because I know I have a call with you in like an hour. Okay, so let's move on. We've talked WordPress. Hey, all right, James is like jumping in. It's like, hey, I want to talk about my stuff. That's perfectly fine. And I also want to make sure that the Couchbot fire. Couchbot fired. I am not playing a game. Couchbot. I really wish they added this currently playing thing in the rebuild, and it's like, I'm not playing games. Seriously, I'm not playing games. I mean, we we're running audits over here. We're not playing games. Anyway, but let's keep moving. And this brings me right back here. Okay, here we go. And I'll shut that down. Let's look at Tegel's site. Okay, we got idea board, and let's see here. It says changed role section now, part of header, so real content. I'm just gonna read this, so I'm gonna kind of internal monologue for a second. Is it better? Left column. Left column, right, the rest of the blue. I make a line between the bullet points and the duration column. Okay. Center the clock. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna do the best I can here, Tegel. So you've not quite following. Okay. The UI should go in the order of logo, image, logo, text, color, image, color, text, icon, type. Okay, I think I'm just gonna have to open it up because I'm not quite. How might we mood boards? Yeah, okay. I'm gonna try to mow through this. Let's go over here and just take a look. So Tegel's portfolio. You folks have been busy this weekend. Let's go live. So we're still loading there. We gotta work. Okay. So we haven't linked up these yet, and that's fine. Okay, so kind of flipping around on how these top elements are being presented. So here's idea board. Okay, so I think what I'm hearing is, and again, sometimes it's this inspector just kind of gets in the way, but I've got container, role. Okay, here's role. Here's this. Okay. All right. So let's look at this. How do you make the left column white and the rest blue? Right now, the way this is structured is it's all blue. Okay. So you're saying you want this to be white and this to be blue. This is really where you're going to have to do a couple things. So you've got a container on here, and you're probably going to have to rethink the container for the content, because you've got color going to the edges on both sides of this. So you're going to need to have something that basically, like, so you have the section, and then inside of the section you have a left column, okay? And the left column is going to be white, and the right column is going to be blue. And because these are separate things, there's not really a way to then neatly just put a container over the top of them, okay? Because you've got this you've got this structural element that needs to get to the edge. All right. And typically speaking, if I had a structural element that needed to get to the edge, like say these, I could do that by having a 2-column grid, and then notice that you've gotten rid of the container here. All right, there is no container. So you're going to have to do basically the same sort of thing, in that you're going to need to essentially, instead of having a container, you're going to have to get rid of the container and then go more with the model that you have down here, where you do have items that go all the way to the edge, like this color here. You know, it could be anything it wants to be, and it goes all the way to that edge. You're also then going to need to measure in from the left, measure in from the right, and make sure that those are applied appropriately so that you get the alignment that you're looking for. So there will be a structural difference here. And I'll kind of go ahead and help you out here. Let's fold some of this stuff up so we can just take a look at the elements that, well, there's a lot of stuff here. All right, close that. So idea board, that's a section. Okay, so you've got roll navy blue, and it's got navy blue all the way across. That's not really going to work. You've basically got to, and I'm going to, rather than tear this apart, I'm just going to kind of structurally go through and say, okay, well, this is a section. Okay, we've got that. And inside of that section, I have a div, and that class is, you know, I'm not quite sure the structure here of what CSS you have and what CSS you do not have. But I'll say this is left call, and then you'll have a div that is right call. And you could apply a grid to, you could apply, you know, you could say grid class equals grid. You could apply a grid to this at this level, and then, you know, this would be a, you know, this would be a 1FR, 2FR sort of grid columns that would be applied to the left and to the right. And then, you know, you could say this is white and this is blue. And that could apply color to the background. And then inside of that, you would have basically idea row left. Okay. And then inside of this one, you would have, well, here's middle, right? And then here's the clock, which is roll right. So I would say that those two would go together in this right call. So I'm just trying to, that's middle, that's right. So this is essentially the structure that you need. How you write the CSS around that is really up to you. But you know, do you make this a grid as well? Because you could say, oh, okay, well, you're a grid now, and that's a grid inside of a grid, and that's perfectly fine. Eventually, we will have subgrid, but we do not have subgrid yet. It's one of those things that off in the yonder, maybe 6 months, you'll have that, but you don't have that right now. And even then, it might be just a tad bit further, and then there's backward compatibility, so there's questions there. But this is how I would structure this based on, and of course it's all weirded out because it's like, hey, put some stuff here. That's how I would structure it to really reflect the question that you have here. So, and you've got other questions here too. And this is it better than before? It's fine. It's not offensive. How do I make the left column white, rest blue? Okay, so we've covered the structural thing. How do I add a line between the bullet points and duration columns? Okay, so let's see here. Bullet points. Oh, so here's bullet points and here's duration. Okay, well, there's a couple of different ways that you could do that. Let's look at this. I'm gonna note, and here's what I'll do, Tedgel. I will note out this. So I'll call this restructure, so that you've got it. I'm gonna note it out. It's there. Okay, so there's the restructure suggestion. I'll push that up, but I don't want to just start tearing things apart. Right here on idea roll right, for instance, we could come back in and we could say, okay, idea roll. Well, here it is. Nope, it's got to be a little higher up. All right, so here we go, and here we go, and here we go. So here's roll right. All right. So if we said border left, 1 pixel solid FFF, you put a line there. Okay. It's going to be the depth of the column. Okay. And the column is that deep. So if you don't want the column to be that deep, you need to somehow adjust the size of it. And the reason the column is that deep is because that column is that deep. That's the column this column is like ruling the roost. So the question is, okay, well, why is the column that deep? And it must be padding to the bottom. Yeah, there's something in there. I'm not sure what it is. It's making it. Yeah, you can see how it gets really deep. Box sizing. Oh, well, in that case, it's shifted. It's actually this left one. And it's this left one because of the text. So, I don't really believe that there's a lot that you can do. And so much of that is, you will see the length of the line shifts based on the amount of padding that's on that paragraph. So your line is being controlled. Your line is being controlled by the first column. All right, that's the first thing you need to realize. The next thing is, okay, so we've got this, and we've got this border left. How do we get it away from our clock? And that would be margin left. And if we said 20 pixels, actually, I guess that would be not margin, but padding. Padding left. And if we said, 20, that moves it away, right? But this is like a structural not great because it keeps jumping up and down in length. Although, or is that an issue? Is that really an issue? I can't tell you that it is or isn't, to be completely honest with you. It's more of an opinion. Okay. What I do find interesting is how much space there is between these. And I'm guessing that's because there's grid. Yep, there's grid. And then there's grid gap. And that's contributing to the line length. All right. So these things are all it's like a Rubik's Cube of stuff. And we've talked about this before. Every move you make impacts something else down the line. And the way that you've structured, like you went with the classic, okay, so I got a column and there's color, or, I've got a section and there's color behind it. And, oh, wait, now I want one color over here and another color over there. All right, well, we've got to restructure how you've built that. And then it's, okay, so I want a line here. Okay, well, that's impacted by the amount of margin or padding you've put on the bottom of this paragraph that's in the first column. So all of these things impact other things, and then it becomes this like race of, and well, it's a decision tree. It's not a race. It's just like, do I want this or do I want that? But that's why it occurs. All right. You had another question with regard to the clock. It was like, how do I get the clock to center on this? And if I text align center, I believe, yeah, there it is. So now everything in there is centered. I believe if you wanted to still say this is left, you'd just say text align left, and it could be. If you're gonna center stuff and it's that small, I'd just make it all center. So that's one of those things that it's like, well, it makes no sense. Why is text align? It's an image. That's some of the hackiness of CSS. But it does function, and it functions consistently. So that's why we just kind of go with that. But it basically these are elements that are painted onto the screen one after another. So it makes no you can go in and say, oh, well, I don't want this one to be a line left. I want it to be, or a line center. I want it to be a line left. And that's fine. But it answers the question that you had. How do I get that to happen? Mobile version, there are a few places where the cards need to be flipped. When I go 2FR to 1FR, how do I make this change? Do I need to replace an entire section for mobile? How might we go in this order? All right, so this is where I think I've just got to kind of scroll down. You, by the way, you have redone this animation, or not animation. You've redone this sequence 2 or 3 times. So I appreciate the gusto of getting after it, but like, cut yourself some slack. All right, so I believe what you're asking is how do you reorder this? And also, it looks like this is now in CSS. No, it's not. Okay, never mind. I will stop getting excited about that. I'll just stop. Although, something's moving there. So what's going on? Image behavior. Sorry, I'm just curious. No, it's still an image. Okay. I think we covered that a few weeks ago. But you are focused on how might we... So where does it say how might we? Oh, here it is. How might we help Anna create mood boards? How might we help Mark save links from articles online? So you've got a reorder that you're wanting to do here, and I think it's related to the fact that Anna and Mark, it's Anna, Mark, and I believe you want it to be Anna, Mark. Okay. So this is where, in my opinion, are you using, I'm trying to figure out what you're using in terms of how is this structured. So let's look at how it's structured so we have a better understanding of that. So this is, okay, so this is grid, right? And this is where grid template area, I believe, would play a role for you. So in using grid template area, we essentially assign a value to each of these elements, and then for mobile, like we could just say this is Anna mood. So this would be Anna mood, Anna note, mark link, mark note. Okay? And in writing this, we would simply assign, I'm just going to select one of these just so we can have it. Okay, so we've got this one. This would be a grid area and a mood. And I believe that we need to make that a string. Maybe it doesn't want to be a string. Maybe it just wants to be this. Okay, so there's that. And then we would come in and we would do the same thing with grid area mark note. Okay, and busted some stuff here, and that's okay. So we've got animode, mark note, and then we're going to come back here and say grid area, Anna note, and then we're going to come through and say grid area, mark link. And this is loading really weird. So I kind of want to see what's going on. But up here at the top of this whole thing, we could come in and say, okay, grid area, grid template areas, and this is where we would say Anna mood Anna note mark link mark note. And in doing that, I have reordered these. And if I wanted to say, okay, instead, all the mark ones go to the top, I would just move those and do that. And inherit's not supposed to be in there. And now Anna's down here and Mark is up here. So grid template area, you have to assign a grid area to each of the things, and then you need to assign grid template area to tell it how to draw and reorder itself. You could also say, you could also name these things, grid area 1, grid area 2, grid area 3, grid area 4, and then they'll say 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever it is that you would like to do. But that's how I would do that. So let's see here. Also, UI logo should go in this order. Yeah, and that would be the same thing. So I really think for you, this is where you get into grid template area, and you begin assigning grid template area to these elements. I want to take a look at. I'm going to close that for a second. UI. Oh, okay. I see. Yeah, it would be the same thing. It would be the same exact thing. You're going to come through. You're going to assign an order, and when it goes down, it will restack itself appropriately. And that's really, I really think that's the next big thing for you, is to get into grid template area. Use the example I just showed, and I will push this up so that you have this sample. Particularly with the restructure. The restructure is really important. Let's work on that, and then let's get into the grid template area stuff. So, get status, and I'm doing this now in case you're following along. I'm doing this now because I always forget when I jump to another project. I don't want to forget this. I don't intentionally be waiting there an hour later going, where's the code, Chris? So git add git commit restructure example. And away it goes. I can't tell you how happy I am that Tegel picked up Git like in 2 seconds, because that allows us to do a lot more collaboration together. Let's go ahead and close that one. Yeah, I'll save it, but I would hope that that would have just shipped. Sorry, I have to now check it. Apparently I had not saved that Tegel, so I will push this again. It happens. All right. So we've looked at Tegel's, we've looked at Rebecca's. Let's take a peek over here at Luigi's. Like, oh, we're gonna look at my stuff. Not yet. Not yet. Katie has been crushing it over here on the affinity mapping. And for those of you who have not gone through affinity mapping is basically where we take all the research done prior to, well, basically it's taking in all the research. So it's competitive analysis, it's competitor research, it's surveys, it's testing the competition, it's user interviews, and it's stakeholder interviews. So it's a lot of one-on-one, some testing, survey, and then like outside research. And then you're taking that information, you're kind of you're reorganizing it into the swim lanes that we all recognize from, if you've been at any startup or inside of any UX program or UX group at a company, you've seen these walls of stickies. This is exactly what she's doing. She's reorganizing all of her research into specific areas, and then she's boiling that down into some clear themes, affinities. People want to be healthy. People want healthy options. The service must be easy to use. People are cooking their own meals, but do they want to? The service should be customizable. The service has to show the value. Show the value is worth the cost, and people want to control how they spend their time. So she took those and applied those to the priority canvas. The service has to show the value. Has to show the value is worth the cost. So this is very display oriented. You can't you can't just say, hey, give me $29.99 a week and I'll send you 6 meals. I need to see the meals. Okay? I need to see the meals. I need to be able to get into that nutritional information, because the very next one is people want to be healthy. People want healthy options. Part of having healthy options is I need transparency into what's in the food. When you talk about transparency of what's in the food, that is inherently a display issue. I need to show the image. I need to make it very easy to get into the nutritional details. I need to have healthy options available. So that's something that goes up the chain. So some of this is like, I'm going to put this on the screen. Some of this is I'm going to report this up the chain so that I'm actually designing something that has healthy options attached to it. Because if you design this thing and you're like, oh, I'm going to show all the nutritional value and whatnot, and then they just come back with a bunch of dishes that are just full of bacon, it's missed the goal. Okay? So many of these, when you're going through product design, there are things that you can do that you can directly impact, and then there are things that you have to communicate So you've done the research, you got to communicate that back. You got to communicate that research back to the people that are going to give you the green light to do the things that you need to do. So secondary, the service should be customizable. The service must be easy to use. That's interesting that customization becomes a secondary consideration. But I got to be honest with you. When I map this out to story mapping later, and again, I've been through this rodeo a few times, so I can kind of see where this goes. I can see the breakdown where it's very easy to say, okay, a secondary concern with customization. So I don't want to see a lot of customization in that first tier of things. I want to see filtering by healthy options and display of nutritional assets. Like you've made health like, okay, we're going to go healthy. All right. So that tells me that healthy up here, customization down here. And when I look at the story map, you can ask James, I'm going to ask questions based on what is on your priority canvas, because James went through this exercise this weekend and I immediately said, James, this doesn't look like your priority map. What's going on? You know, or not your priority map, but your priority canvas, your affinity map. We have priority guides too. All these priorities, so many rules. But the main goal here, Katie, is that you know, it's not that you're right or wrong here. It's that when you put your stake in the ground, you stick by that, okay? And because you've done the research, okay? To waver around, I'm going to always come back to this and go, okay, what about this? You said this. And that's not to say you can't move, okay? You just have to make a compelling argument why you're moving. You know, was it something that you've discovered along the way? Because so often what I have found is that it's not that we move intentionally. I've had conversations with Luigi on this. It's not that we move intentionally. It's that we forget we put the stake in the ground. And we kind of meander off into this new area where we kind of, you got caught up in, oh, I need to add this, and oh, I need to add that. And you got caught up in scope creep and you forgot about the whole pile of research you just did. So, not that you've done that, because you're just here creating your priority canvas, Katie, but I do want to emphasize that I will come back to this. This, you know, and I really think that's the key to the program. It's not that you're just kind of going through and doing a bunch of willy-nilly exercises. It's that we're practicing the ability to keep a focus for the duration of a project, and that is difficult, okay? And that's why I'm here. I'm here to like say, okay, have we done this thing? Are we staying true to the principles that we set forth? And if we're not, is there a good reason why we're deviating? Okay? So I think you did great here. The big lift here, honestly, is everything that's up here, though. Okay? Once you've got everything up here, this is a piece of cake. But it's getting from here to here, and then up to here. That's the lift, and that's why we had a call last week on this. So good job. Let's move forward. All right, Luigi, patiently waiting, and I believe this is the first look that many of you have had into the interface design program. So Luigi's working through the first battery of exercises. And the way this works is we go through the information design and interface design portion of the program before we loop back around to the big project everybody's working on. And the reason we do that is I want to make sure that you are armed with the knowledge necessary to begin building on the wireframes and prototypes initial prototypes that you made in the first part of the program. So Luigi's going through, and like the first exercise here is just on establishing hierarchy. And what I'll say is, so this first exercise here is really trying to, and I'm going to like just make this larger to where we can look at it. It's really trying to establish like a clear lead, okay? And while I definitely get it over here, you know, this, like, boom, right there at the top, I would say that this first one is less than clear. And so much of it is, and you'll get into this in information design, Luigi, is how our eyes group elements together. So when you look at this, this is the largest image. But because these images are together in a row at relatively the same size, and they all have, well, except for this one. This one kind of breaks the mold just a little bit. Vertical, vertical, vertical. This is less successful. Now, that's not to say that it isn't successful, but it's less of a clear-cut, strong lead. And a few things that you'll pick up on. Our eyes naturally gravitate to the upper left. If your language is a westernized language like English, French, German, Spanish, your eyes are up and to the left because typography starts at the left and moves right. If this was Hebrew, if your language is Hebrew, or any of it's like Sanskrit languages, you would read right to left, and that would mean that our focus should be over here instead, and then move around. But this first one, there are a few things that I like. One, you did not trip over the clear issue of there being different types of images to choose from. Editing is a core responsibility of a designer, and Luigi was presented with images that were not all nature. He edited those out very smartly, just as he edited out all the images that weren't bridges. As you can see here, these are all bridges. And I can't tell you how many people have fallen over. I used to have this exercise where it was like a space program, and I inserted like a walrus and a giraffe, and I would see photos of the walrus and giraffe pop up left and right. And it's just because people get too caught up in, ooh, I'm going to pull this stuff in, I'm going to put it in there, and we pay less attention to, okay, so what are we focused on doing? So good job there. And you can kind of see down here, like, if I said pull in all the bridges, well, I wouldn't pull in this, and I wouldn't pull in that or that. This is meant to be like, is that a bridge? Isn't it a bridge? And let's see. You stayed away from it. Because it's like a trick one. But you would have been right either way on that one. So just aware. And keep in mind, if you're watching this, I'm changing these out. So there will be other challenges along the way. So don't worry if you're going back through the archive and you see this and you're like, well, my challenge looks different. That's by design. I'm not going to keep the same challenges in there. All right. Now the second part of this is about space. So the first part was like just hierarchy. Second part is space and how we can use space to create a focal point. Sometimes it's almost in concert with hierarchy. This image here really helps hold the space together, sorry, I have to turn there we go. So this image really helps hold things together, but if I were to turn the image off, oh, that's grouped. Never mind. Is it grouped? No, it's not grouped. It did change spacing on me though. Anyway, if I were to turn this image off, and switch this and just say, okay, the fill here is going to be black. And don't worry, Luigi, I will switch this back. I'm not really changing the fill here. But I'm focused on what happens with this image. If we're talking about space, okay? Image or no image, that's creating a focal point just by the space around it. All right? But very common in modern design, in modern interface design, you'll see something that looks a lot like this, where, hey, I'm just going to put typography over the top of this image. I would say that this is like a really weird, and I'm gonna turn the grid off here for a second, although I can't find it on this one. Oh, weird. So something happened here, but I'll just go ahead and make I'll make a frame out of this. There we go. It's weird. I'm not sure how the grid is even necessarily applied there. Oh, there it is. Okay. Anyway, the whole point is this image is not really great for the usage, mainly because the typography here is going like right over her face. Okay? So from a spacing issue, it's fine, but it's not a great usage of the orientation that's here. So actually, Luigi, I'm going to kick this one back and ask, okay, how would we use this basic design with the image without putting the type over her face? Now this is going to send a note back to Luigi, and this is where we begin doing a lot more of our feedback in Figma, using the commenting engine. But when I look at this, and this is really important when you get into designing for things that aren't controlled pixel precision, specifically responsive design. You have to think about how these images and type and all these elements begin to interact when this begins to move. Right now, it's already kind of busted. Freedom to work from anywhere with the typography. So keep that in mind. Over here, different, okay? Over here, we have the same basic design spatially, and there are other ways that we could have designed this. Clearly, there are other ways that I could have done a lot of different things here. But Luigi's decided to go with just open air. He's got a little bit of type over here to the side. He's got the image here. Okay? This works well. There's nothing wrong with this. Now, I do think the spacing here is a little tight, but he's working with the shapes that I provided. Okay? Ow. Sorry. I just, ripped my hand. He's working with the shapes that are provided, and I think this works pretty well. Could it be better? Well, of course it could. Could it be different? Absolutely. There's a lot of different ways, and that's one of the things that I don't worry about these designs. You'll come up with other solutions, okay? And again, I'll be flipping these out, so it's not like this is the only version of the hierarchy assignment that you'll see. Same thing goes for grids. The real trick here was to find the margin, and so with grids, this is the column that he set up, and the real key is sitting here and figuring out, okay, well, how do I get this to measure in? And then you see that it's pretty close, but you can always count on there to be a little padding around these icons, and in figuring that out, you can see there's probably, a touch zone that's around that anyway. The DZ one was interesting in that it has a very clear left edge, but the right edge is just kind of, I can kind of guess where the edge would that be, but this kind of floats, and it doesn't really quite go over here, but it goes all the way to the edge. I like the style of DZ. I want to throw it in there, but I did like the fact that it was kind of like this obscure right edge. We go over here to hire a villa. Yeah, hire a villa. Sorry, hire a villa. Of course it is. And as you can see, this is interesting in that it is a 12 column design, but is it really? Like, how many columns is this really? And I think that there are three possible answers here. And I will kick that back to Luigi. He's found the columns. He's found the columns, but he hasn't found the specific number of columns. Like, there is not 12 columns here. So this is where I will kick back. There are 12 columns presented, but not 12 columns in this design. Can you adjust your column structure to represent the most prevalent grid? And that's a challenge. We'll see how he does with it. I'm pretty sure he'll do great. And then as we move over, you see that I provided a number of assets to create with. And this one was, I think, really pretty color by numbers. It's clearly Pinterest. But I did not bother to structure it in such a way that made it very clear what was inbounds and what was out of bounds in terms of how you would go about building this. But I did want to see like what you would do with a blank canvas. The exercises do get harder as you get in. This is just focused on grids. So let's move forward. This one is pretty easy peasy in my opinion. Let's see how Luigi did. So 1 is cap height. That's right, because we can see here at the top of the B. 2 is X height. That's the size of the lowercase. Baseline is 3. Ascender is up here at 4. Overhang is here at 5, and overhang is always a tricky one. This is one I want you to get comfortable with, and it seems weird. It's like, why is that important? It is important because there will be so many times that you will want to adjust your baseline grid because you'll feel like, oh, that's just hanging over. It's supposed to hang over. Okay? There are certain typography that has a natural overhang. Okay? And if you're not aware of that, it will drive you nuts. Okay? So that's why this is on here. I want you to be aware of overhang. All right, descender, scat descender, counter. Counter is these inside areas. Counter is why your eyes can read the typography. Okay? These inside shapes, that's how we recognize glyphs and characters. All right? Serifs. Those are the serifs. And there's other serifs here. And there are other structural elements here as well. I did not go into everything, mainly because I didn't cover everything. And now that I think about it, there's a second type video that I have not released yet. So here, I provided a series of typography to study and ask about usage. And you've got to really go through the curriculum to to better understand where I'm coming from on these things. Um, you know, Dido, it's too frail for paragraph text or labels, in my opinion. It's a beautiful headline font, just a beautiful headline font. Roboto, it could be used as anything really. I tend to think that it's just a little too plain to be used for headlines. I really like things like Plex and Dido for headlines, but Roboto could be used for headlines. And as you can see, I really think this Plex serif, like in this particular case, the Plex is just too light for a label. Now, if you went bold or black, you could totally get there. I could see it. But for this usage, nah. I do like it as a paragraph. I love it as a paragraph text. Like it as a headline as well. Luigi's got some Y's here. Distinctive serif, legible at large sizes, difficult to read as both the label and body font because of its high stroke contrast. This is how I know Luigi read the content. When I see these buzzwords popping out, when I hear you talking about typography, it's got a high stroke contrast. It's got a low stroke contrast with no overhang. Okay? Overhang, no overhang. This is the type of stuff I'm paying attention to. Okay? IBM suitable, the serifs feel less, because of the serifs, it feels less legible as a label. I would say it has medium stroke contrast, which makes it more difficult to read at smaller sizes. Okay. Excellent work. Excellent work all the way around. All the way around. Good job there. And then type specimen. Now here I'm gonna kick this back. We're gonna do a couple of examples or a couple of rounds here. The one thing I'll point out here is if we look at IBM Plex, and this is Plex Sans, you'll see that like the ascender and the cap height and the X height and the baseline is clearly marked on each of these. Man, and I love Plex Sans for italic. That is just a gorgeous font. Typeface. Here, though, we have not adjusted those items, Luigi. Like I have not. You've gone through and kind of brought this stuff in, and I see like it looks like you tried to line it up with the overhang, but then you left the baseline short on the actual typography. Same thing here. There's such a disparity here. We just clearly we've not adjusted any of this to where we're really looking at, okay, what is the X? Does this have a big X height? Does this have what's the discrepancy on the ascender and the cap height? Like, I want you paying attention to these things. So I'm going to kick this one back. Although Gilliard Pro is really a gorgeous font. And what do we got here? This is Mokoko. And I got to be honest with you. Some of these typefaces, you always bring typefaces into my realm that I haven't looked at. And this is something that I think if you spend any time watching these videos, watch the typography videos where you're bringing in conversation, you're bringing in typography to consider. There's so many typefaces out there in the world. It's very difficult to keep up with them. Look for people to bring things into your ecosystem for consideration. Same thing here. Look at the X height. Like we haven't really adjusted any of this information for it. These things, just grab it and move it around as necessary. This is up here. It's weird. It's like that's there. And you may what you may find yourself doing, Luigi, is you may find yourself like, okay, I'm going to lock that down so that I can get in here and kind of do what I need to do. So there, I've locked that down, and now I can come in and adjust this so I can really see what the hell's going on. Like the X height on this is so much different. And the real key to this is so we can look at side to side and see what the differences are. You know, if I turn this off, I can now see like the X height here is so much smaller than the X height over here, and I haven't even begun to adjust things over here. I mean, look at the difference. I mean, there's like a giant gap here in the X height. And this one goes way up. So the real key here for me is the ability to see the differences between the structural elements and what you're really doing. In this exercise, you're basically going through the anatomy of type. Okay? This book essentially breaks down 100 different typefaces, and you know the funny thing is, I don't think you hit a single one that's in this book. I guarantee none of the typefaces that you're studying, Luigi, are in this book, and that's why and that's why I love this exercise, because it gives you an opportunity to basically say, okay, I'm going to do what they do in the anatomy of type, but I'm going to do it with typography that I want to use, okay? And a lot of this typography isn't available to the general public, or it's hard to find, or you can't get it in a web font. Like there's all sorts of limitations to it. Here, you know, you're jumping through, and you know, I'm going to go through and take a closer look at the rest of this, but you know, over here, one thing I'm interested in is you've taken the content, and okay, so there's a couple things here. One, I never want to see a tick mark. Okay, that is an apostrophe. That is not. Okay, that's like feet. All right, and this is Shift Option close bracket. Shift Option open bracket is a paragraph. I need you to like commit that. And what's funny is I just realized that my type, let's see, what is it called? I think it's Keystroke, or Keystroke Pro is Keystroke Pro was shut down because I had to restart my machine, and you know, I do that, and it's like, well, come on, Chris, you gotta show the kids what's up. There it is. So let's do this again. Option or Shift Option close bracket. That gets you the apostrophe. Let's do it another way. Shift Option paragraph, or open bracket gets you the closing paragraph. So let's do it another way. Option opening bracket gets you the paragraph. Option closing bracket gets you the opening. Well, it's a single quote. So single quote closing, single quote or double quote closing, single quote opening, double quote opening, and then Shift Option. Well, I busted that. Yeah, okay, there you go. So Shift Option and then the brackets. Okay, that's the important thing to take away here. But it's all better. It's all better than and actually I think the just straight up. Yeah, wow. Okay. So Figma is super nice because the straight up quotes will work here. I'm not even sure how you got the tick mark. Now that I'm getting back to it, like I'm not sure how that showed up. Because when we started this, we were over there. Don't do those. Those are bad. So when I look at this, Luigi, like this is really lightweight for reading. Um, and I want to see what typeface is this. Okay, so this is Grotesque. This is Galliard. This is Grotesque. Yeah, it's interesting. I definitely think that you want to have. Sorry. Yeah, you had light here. I would stay away from light. I also worry about what happens to this if this is, 20 paragraphs long. That becomes a consideration for me. I also want to look back at Grotesque and Galliard structurally, and then of course I want to see the A. I'm not sure where the A went. Okay. There's the A. So the A here is like an alternative A. It's not the old school hook A, and that's fine. You don't have to have that old school hook A. It's just that I'm looking for similarities between the two, and I don't have things like that. This is a really interesting question mark though. Yeah, this for me is not a wholly successful pairing, but that a lot of it has to do with the weight of this and the fact that it's lightweight at that. I want to look further down here. So we've got subscribe now. Is this Grotesque again? Okay, that's that. There's Galliard Pro. There's Galliard Pro again. And then subscribe. So subscribe bold is fine. This would work better in a longer read. I do think that there's an opportunity to come back with the sorry, I've got to remember the name of this typography that you've got here. Newsite. So I want to go back and I want to get Newsite in here. So you have Newsite, okay, and maybe you go bold with it, or you go Newsite lightweight, and you go Galliard. Well, I don't want to really go bold. Yeah, I think Roman's right. Some of this may just be the line height that you have here. Like if I go a slightly negative line height on this, it's a little more interesting. And this pairs together pretty well. You can have these other weights up here. Like if I went black, that's definitely stepping out away from the headline. And then I kind of want to tighten these things up, or I want to space them out. It's weird. It a lot of times, and this is more information design coming out, which is oddly enough the next thing that you're going to get into. But as far as when I look at this and I look at where we started at, this feels much like the same. I think at minimum you need to go with something like I need some sort of shift. If you're going to use the same typography, I need a shift. So what is that shift? You've got at least a little bit of a shift here between the two, although I would go further. I might even suggest doing something like that, just to kind of pop it out there, um, but here I have no shift between these. These are exactly the same font, just at different sizes, and it just doesn't have it. So there's that. Here you at least have shifted around as much as you can. But if you're wondering why it feels like it feels kind of like you're playing inside of a box with particularly with this font. You have black, you have regular, you have bold, you have regular, and it's because you have basically you've chosen a font that has 4 weights. Okay? Now, that's not to say you can't do a lot with a font that has 4 weights, but you've got to be willing to go in and say, okay, well, I'm gonna mess around with how this is being displayed, so that I can sit here and I can there's a lot that you can do with horizontal spacing. There's just a lot that you can do, and then a lot comes into, okay, well, how am I packaging this information together, and is 12 really the weight that it needs to be? I've got pre-order here. Should pre-order be larger than the others? Should these be packaged together? And again, this is where information design, which is what you're about to get into, Luigi, begins to play a huge role. So I'm going to undo these because I feel like I'm kind of giving answers at this point. But I really think that some of this comes into what can we do to... I'm just going to leave comments here. And then here, I'm interested in and I apologize, Luigi, if I'm getting too much into information design, but so much of this is lacking that bit of polish. And then we talked about the spacing here to properly study the typefaces. We need to adjust the underlying dashed guides for comparison sake. Okay, so that really goes for all of them, not just one or the other. So all of these need to be adjusted. We need to look at this as well. There's a couple of areas of adjustment there. So again, Luigi crushed through, jumped through, did a lot of work here over the course of the weekend. That doesn't mean that it all is good or bad. And that's one of the things about the interface design program is that a lot of these initial exercises, they can be done. You do not have to wait on feedback on any of them because they're all built separately from one another. But that also means that you could do 4 exercises and have to go all the way back to the first one for some recalibration. And that's what the feedback loop is all about. So, wow, ladies and gentlemen, whew, holy moly. Lots of stuff. Boy, we went through it all today. Well, without further ado, I am Chris Courtney, and this has been the Feedback Loop. I hope you're having a great day, great month of February, and I will see all of you again tomorrow. Take care.